he might not even declare. With the type of NIL deals that he can sign, he might be in college another 3 years. The gold of this class, the hidden treasure, the creme de la creme, realize it might not even be available in the 2026 class. Let's look a little bit towards the future, all right? Let's look at the 2026 Dynasty rookie class. I'm gonna give you my top 40 rankings, and we'll kind of try and digest this class 1 year out. Now, look, I gotta say, I'm typically Mr. Brightside, right? Glass half full type of guy. I mean, this time last year, I was telling you about the 2025 rookie class. I said, look, this running back class might be the best class we've seen since 2017. There is reasons for hope. But unfortunately, I am here to tell you that at least 1 year out, and lots can change, but as of right now, 1 year out, this looks like the worst Dynasty rookie class I have seen since I started scouting Dynasty rookies, okay? And again, we're 1 year out, anything can change, but I've never been a year out and thought, wow, this class is truly, shockingly awful. And the worst part about it is, every player that we're going to talk about today, they have a lot of things they need to do to take a next step up. There's no like Luther Bird and Tet McMillan where there's proven production and we're going to wait for them again to have another great year. There's no Ashton Genty, Judkins, Travion Henderson names that were like, yeah, we already know they're going to be great pros. They just need to keep building on that progress. So it's going to be a tough class, but let's jump into tier number 1. And let's start off with my first ranked player, Arch Manning. You know the name, right? Obviously the bloodline with the Manning family. He should be the next great NFL quarterback. 6'4", 224 pounds. Had a pretty good year. Limited action, right? He only played when Quinn Ewers went down, but in his limited action, he showed a lot of signs of life, right? He had about a 68% completion percentage, which was great. He was stretching the field, had the second highest yards per attempt number. And by the way, that is out of 165 quarterbacks who had at least 100 dropbacks. And this chart, by the way, I charted out the entire class, players that I thought would be relevant, is available on the Flock Fantasy website. You can use our promo code LAND, get a free account, and check it out. Okay, so his passing grade was over 81. He had a big time throw percentage of 6.4%, which was a nice number. Took care of the ball under a 2% turnover worthy play percentage. And he had the #1 rated NFL passer rating. Again, in limited action. So there are definitely signs of life. We know the bloodline. We know he has literally been born, fed, and raised to be an NFL quarterback, even coming out of high school, right? He was the highest ever graded recruit for a quarterback. Arch Manning come out of high school when he committed to Texas. But here's the issue, guys. Even though I'm excited about Arch Manning, number 1, he hasn't proven anything just yet. And number 2, he might not even declare. He's going to be a junior. It will be his first year starting college ball for an entire season. There's going to be no rush for this guy to get to the NFL. With the type of NIL deals that he can sign, he might be in college another 3 years. With the 5th year, it's like, that's a real possibility. So the gold of this class, the hidden treasure, the creme de la creme, realize it might not even be available in the 2026 class, okay? All right, the second player in the same tier here, this is a player that I'm very confident is probably the player I'm the most confident of being good in 1 year from now, as far as a guy we're excited about. That is Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. He is 6 foot, 206 pounds, and he had an incredible season, all right? Over 1,100 rushing yards, almost 7 yards per carry, which was 7th best in the nation out of 219 running backs with at least 75 attempts. He had 17 touchdowns. He had the 5th best PFF run grade. Yards to contact per attempt, over 4.3, 15th best in the nation. He forced 62 missed tackles, and we're talking about turning lemons into lemonade. He had a 0.38 missed tackles forced per attempt rate. Guys, the only player in the 2025 class with a higher rate was Ashton Genty himself. He had a breakaway percentage of over 52%, so we know those explosive plays were there. You know, the receiving yardage in the receiving game is definitely being nurtured up, but I think he's going to be have another great season. He'll be a crucial part of Notre Dame's team. And don't judge him off of last year's playoff run because he was injured. He's a fantastic player. At number 3, and the last player in this tier, that is another quarterback, Lenoris Sellers. Lenoris Sellers is the fun, like, what if type of player. So he started for the first time this year. He had a very good season. He was a red shirt freshman, right? He came out, completed 65% of his passes, over 2,500 yards. 18-7 touchdown to interception ratio, had a nice deep ball, but more importantly, he's a dual threat quarterback. You see, he was second best in the class in rushing yards, 852. And keep in mind, in college, they count your sacks or any negative plays as negative rushing yards. So in reality, he had well over 1,000 rushing yards, right? This is a true dual threat guy. And by the way, 6'3", 242 pounds. I mean, this is maybe the next Josh Allen if he develops into becoming that. And that's what you need to know about this class, guys. I will say this, beyond this tier entirely, every other player that we're going to talk about is, if they develop, they can be important in your dynasty rookie drafts. Yes, I know we've only talked about 3 players, but from here on out, every other player, like, there is major development still to be made. Let's get into tier number 2 here. That is Drew Aller. You probably know him by now. There was a thought that maybe he would enter the 2025 NFL draft. Didn't have the best playoff, so he's come back to Penn State. 6'5", 240 pounds. You know, he had a pretty decent year as well. Completed over 66% of his passes, over 3,300 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, took care of the ball, 2.1 turnover worthy play percentage, had a pretty decent deep ball, and showed some rushing upside with 419 rushing yards. Again, that big body, him and Lenore Sellers have a similar body type, but Lenore Sellers is more electric in the open field. He's more of a true dual threat guy. And a lot of development left for Drew Aller, but the ceiling does not exist for a player like this. And the good news is, if Drew Aller comes out and has another smash season, that is multiple years of him continually building on, development, and NFL teams are going to fall in love with that. At number 5, let's talk about his teammate returning, Nicholas Singleton. Now, Nicholas Singleton was not in the top 5 of my running back rankings for the 2025 class before he decided to return to Penn State. However, I will say he had one of the most impressive playoff runs this postseason. He was absolutely fantastic in the college football playoffs and the Big Ten championship. He went off. But this year he had over 1,100 rushing yards, 6.5 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns. Missed tackles forced is always been an issue for him. He only had 33 missed tackles forced, which was 79th. He had a 0.1 missed tackles forced per attempt rate, which, again, not very special. That does not stand out. He is not someone who's moving left to right, who is really breaking through contact often. He is like a guy who you really want to get the ball to in open space, one cut, speed, and, you can also use him out of the backfield. He's a pretty good receiver. In fact, he was one of the premier receiving running backs in college football this year. He had 231 snaps where he ran a receiving route, and he split the backfield with Katron Allen. He had 41 receptions and 375 yards, which was the 6th most amongst running backs in college football this year. So he had a fantastic year. If he can continue to be that version of himself, the college football player version of himself, he will probably have a chance to be a top 32 pick in next year's draft. All right, into tier number 3. Now we have fully, undoubtedly entered the what if development land. All right, you ready for this? And I will say the quarterback class looks better potentially in 2026 than it does in 2025. There's just so many what if guys, including Nico. I'm not going to pretend to know how to say his last name. Iamaliva, I don't know. Okay, Nico, highly touted recruit. Remember how we talked about how Arch Manning was the number 1 recruit in his class? Right behind him was Nico, right? Nico committed to the University of Tennessee. He had a pretty good year this year, 6'6", 215 pounds. So he has the NFL body build to be a starting quarterback. He's a very special athlete, has that rushing appeal as well. This year, he completed about 64% of his passes. What I love about him is he takes care of the football. All right, he only had 5 interceptions as well as 19 passing touchdowns. Pretty decent PFF grade. Deep ball was decent. NFL passer rating was decent. Almost had 500 rushing yards. He's, again, another guy who's a true development, upside, untapped potential type of player. But there's no guarantee right now, a year out, that he's going to be even a starting quarterback in the NFL. At number 7, this will be the first wide receiver for me this far out from the 2026 class. I really don't think there is a single receiver that you can point to that you would say is the clear number 1. Like last year, you probably could have made a case for Ted McMillan, for Luther Burden. The year before that, for Marvin Harrison Jr. In a year from now, we can make the case for Jeremiah Smith. But there is like 7 guys that you can make a case for being the number 1 wide receiver, and it's not a good thing. It doesn't mean the class is great. It means the class is very, very weak. So first wide receiver for me, Antonio Williams, 5'11", 190 pounds. And he had a pretty good season here, right? He had 75 receptions, which is tied for the most of anyone that I charted in this class. He had 900 yards, 11 touchdowns, which was 6th best in the nation. Caught a very high percentage of his passes, 75%, was very efficient, was very effective. Caught 11 out of 19 contested catches, which we also love to see. Now, he didn't really stretch the field vertically very much. He had a 10.2 ADOT, so he's really used more around the line of scrimmage, but he seems to be like a very reliable slot, inside-outside guy that could translate to the next level, and was a highly touted recruit as well coming out. At number 8, we'll talk about another wide receiver here. It is the Ohio State name. His name is Carnell Tate. All right. Now, if you look at Carnell Tate's numbers, they're not that impressive, right? 52 catches, 733 yards, only 4 touchdowns. The analytics aren't going to really blow your mind. What I will say is 2 numbers that really stood out to me. The reception percentage, he had a 77.6% reception percentage, which was tied for the highest in this class. He also had a 60% contested catch rate, caught 6 out of 10 contested catches. And the reason that the production isn't going to blow you away is because he was sharing a wide receiver room with Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, all these names. And now that Egbuka has moved on, he has a real legitimate opportunity to break out here in 2025 to be a great pick in 2026. But again, that's not a guarantee. All right, at number 9, we're going to talk about a running back that was going to be one of my favorite sleepers in the 2025 class, but he ended up returning. He dealt with some injuries. His name is Le'Veon Moss. I was a huge fan of Le'Veon Moss, loved his film. The analytics all backed up that he looked like a pretty good player as well. But unfortunately, he had an undisclosed injury and he had to return back to college. But he had 765 yards in limited action, 6.3 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, had a high yards after contact per attempt number. In fact, he was number 1 of any running back that I charted in this class. Didn't get used much in the air, but I thought he was a very effective, I'd say smooth, shifty runner. I really enjoyed watching him play, and him standing at 6 foot 215, he was ideal size. So I'm excited to see him another year at Texas A&M. All right, at number 10, we have a transfer here, Justice Haynes, who transfers over from Alabama to Michigan. He has a chance to be the guy for the Michigan Wolverines. That offense is going to completely change with Bryce Underwood coming in, that high recruit Bryce Underwood, and kind of changing that offense entirely. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. And yes, he transferred to Michigan, but he was also the number 1 ranked running back in the transfer portal, according to most of the websites who track it. Now, coming out of high school, he was the 3rd highest rated recruit of the running back position. So he still has a lot to prove because at Alabama, the numbers are not very exciting to look at. Now, to be fair, Alabama's offense and their team in general has not been the same since Nick Saban left. Like, the run game has not really been the same since, but mediocre season. He has a chance to really bounce back here at Michigan and be their guy. He was such a highly touted recruit. Now he has a chance to really prove himself. All right, at number 11, Jordan Tyson, who could very easily be the number 1 wide receiver in this class. In fact, if you're just going to go based off of production, he should probably be the number 1 wide receiver in this class at this point. Was tied for first in receptions, led all wide receivers that I charted in receiving yards, had 10 touchdowns, had a good PFF receiving grade. Yards per route run was up there, best in the class. Contested catch percentage was best in the class. So he showed a lot of promises, him and Sam Leavitt. They had a very good chemistry. They're both going to be back at Arizona State this year. And I think Jordan Tyson has a chance to really, really improve his draft capital. All right, at 12, it's another guy that we're just expecting big things from. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. That is C.J. Baxter. Coming out of high school, he was the number 1 recruit at the running back position, a 5-star recruit. Now, he's had a decent season the year before. Now, the issue is he hasn't been healthy enough to really showcase what he can be on the field. I mean, coming out of high school, we had people comparing him to Joe Mixon. That kind of talent is what people compared him to. So he's going to have to prove it, but he is a player that definitely has a chance to end up being the number 1 running back in the class if he puts it all together. He's so talented, great size at 6'1", 220 pounds. He should be a monster this year. If you want an in-depth breakdown of your team with customized trade targets, players to buy, sell, hold, then get your team playbook today by either becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND or by going directly to the Flock store, regardless of what promo code you're on. And if you want it done live, make sure you get the live tier. Those links are in the pinned comment. All right, tier number 4. Let's get to it, shall we? Starting off with Garrett Nussmeier, who is another developmental quarterback out of LSU. first half of the college football season in 2024, people thought Garrett Nussmeier had a chance to be the #1 quarterback in this class. So he has a chance to continually improve on his development. You know, they have other guys who have transferred in at receiver to really help his case in 2025, but I'm excited to see him grow. At 14th overall, we have another quarterback here. You see, there's so many guys that could potentially be important if they have good college football seasons in 2025, but Cade Klubnik. Now, if that name sounds familiar, that's because Cade Klubnik was supposed to be the next great thing after Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. That's how long it's been. And he's had some really bad years, but he has constantly improved each and every season. In fact, Cade Klubnik is probably underrated at this point. In 2024, he had 3,600 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, which was third most in the nation, only 6 interceptions, had the 6th best PFF passing grade, a big time throw percentage of 5.4%, took care of the ball, great deep ball, was great under pressure as well. And this is what really stands out about Cade Klubnik's game. He has taken that next step. He is a lot more composed and poised within the pocket. In fact, he's the only quarterback I tracked in this class that actually performed well under pressure. He had the 10th best pressure grade, which is great to see. And he has some rushing upside as well, almost 600 rushing yards. So I think he has a chance to be a real sleeper in the 2026 class. Right after that, a guy that we haven't seen really play much at all, but another highly touted recruit, Dante Moore, and that Arch Manning Nico class. He was the 4th highest graded player in the entire class, committed to UCLA, then transferred to Oregon, sat behind that Oregon offense last year, now has a chance to step in and be the guy. When he was coming out of high school, I compared him a little bit to like a CJ Stroud level of player. So I think there's a lot of growth still left to be done, but he could be a special player in this class. All right, at 16 overall, we have a wide receiver that I am kind of obsessed with. I'm not going to lie. Makai Lemon. All right, Makai Lemon this year caught 77.6% of his passes, had a over 3.0 yards per route run, 12th best in the nation, had a drop rate of 1.9%. He was like the only wide receiver I tracked this year that had a reasonable drop rate. In fact, it's very good at 1.9%. Had the most missed tackles forced per target, really shifty in the open field after the catch. He is 5'11", 190 pounds, so he has that size to play inside, outside. He was probably the best receiver at USC. I know some people can make an argument for a different name, Jacoby Lane, but I prefer Makai Lemon here. All right, at number 17, you know the name, Evan Stewart. Now, here's the deal with Evan Stewart. Uber talented. Coming out of high school, people were comparing him to Devonta Smith. I kind of fell into that trap, even myself, right? But never really proved the production at Texas A&M. Last year at Oregon, he just wasn't the guy. He just wasn't week in, week out putting up those numbers. Now that he and Dante Moore are going to be a combo, he needs to have a full season of being that dude week in, week out that the defense is game planning for, that no matter what you're doing, I'm putting up my numbers. He needs to do that, and he will absolutely propel himself up draft boards in 2026. All right, at number 18, we have a running back that is transferring. That is Quentin Joyner. He is 5'11", 216 pounds. Now, he didn't meet the qualifier for me to actually track his numbers here because he played so little amount of opportunities. In 2024, he had 63 carries, but he averaged 7.6 yards per attempt, a very high number. We love to see that. And now he just transferred from USC over to Texas Tech. Now Taj Brooks is moving on. He should be the guy, the feature for them. And if he decided to transfer from USC, you got to believe that Texas Tech told him, hey, it's your job. Like, come in here and we're going to give you as much opportunity as you can possibly handle. Now, if you remember back to that class with CJ Baxter, who we talked about, and Justice Haynes, Quentin Joyner was the 4th overall rated running back in that class. So a very high recruit who's about to step into a bunch of opportunities. At number 19, we have Darius Taylor, who is a running back from Minnesota. Now, Darius Taylor is an interesting name, okay? Because the rushing numbers aren't going to blow you away. 4.8 yards per attempt is actually pretty mediocre. But what is exciting about Darius Taylor is his receiving upside. He is 6 foot, 215 pounds. He led all running backs that I tracked in snaps were running a receiving route. He led all running backs in receptions, 3rd in the nation, by the way, and he was 2nd in receiving yards with 349. So there's a little bit of an excitement there as a receiving profile. At number 20, how about Mekhi Hughes, another transfer, 5'11", 210 pounds. He's transferring from Tulane to Oregon. He's going to join Dante Moore and Evan Stewart. We've seen so many good running backs come out of this organization, right? Bucky Irving, Jordan James getting some hype this year. And, Mekhi Hughes was out of Tulane last year. He had a nice season. He had over 1,400 rushing yards, 9th best in the nation, 15 touchdowns, 7th highest PFF run grade, 61 missed tackles forced. He had a very nice profile, and he did it in an offense in Tulane that's kind of mediocre. Now he's going to Oregon. He should have a chance to completely blow up this year. At 21, another transfer, Eric Singleton Jr. I really like him. There's a lot of shiftiness to his game, quick movements. He can play inside, outside, though, even though he's only 5'11", 190 pounds. He transferred from Georgia Tech to Auburn, but has a chance to be, another one of these shifty guys. Think Josh Downs, but he can play a little bit more outside. All right, in tier 5, we'll go through these a little bit quicker, but we have Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. Another one of these names that is going under the radar, but had pretty decent production this year. 957 receiving yards was second highest of any wide receiver I tracked this year. But to be fair, this class doesn't look great overall. But big body, can play on the outside, was really great at Indiana this year. At 23, you've probably been waiting on this name, Zachariah Branch. He finally comes off the board for me. 5'10", 175 pounds. The issue with Zachariah Branch is he's never really produced any significant numbers. I know he's transferred to Georgia and he should have an opportunity to put up numbers now, but he has never put up significant numbers, okay? This year he had 47 receptions, 500 yards, 1 touchdown, right? I mean, that is the worst of anyone that I tracked. His PFF grade was really low. Now, he had a great yak per reception, but that's because his ADOT was by far the lowest in the class at 6.7. Everything he's getting at USC is at the line of scrimmage. Now, at Georgia, are they going to let him kind of unleash his game? Maybe he turns this around because he was a 5-star recruit formerly, but he has a lot of growth to do. There's no way you can just rely on him because of the type of recruit he was. At 24, Eugene Wilson, wide receiver out of Florida, who shows a lot of promise. At 25, Katron Allen. This is Nicholas Singleton's backfield mate. I like Katron, but he's more Brian Robinson than he is any special athlete coming out of college. Kanye Udo, out of Army. He transferred from Army and he's going to Arizona State. Army had such a good year this year and he was a crucial part of it. I kind of want Kanye to be a thing just because his name is Kanye. Like, that's incredible. But he had over 1,100 yards, 6.2 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns. He showed a lot of promise, but he got literally no receiving work. He had 1 reception and 3 receiving yards on the entire season. Now, a team like Arizona State just use Cam Scatterboot out of the air often. Will they do the same for Kanye? We'll have to wait and see. All right, at 27 and 28, we have 2 guys who have transferred to LSU. Nick Anderson at 6'4", 219 pounds, as well as Barrion Brown. I kind of prefer Barrion Brown, but the consensus is Nick Anderson, and that's why I've ranked them that way at this point. At 29, we have John Mateer. He's 6'1", 219 pounds. He just transferred from Washington State to Oklahoma. The thing that is really intriguing to me about John is that he led all quarterbacks that I scouted here in rushing yards. He had over 1,000 rushing yards, 29 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, has a little bit of that dual threat ability. I wonder if another quarterback coming out of Washington State can transfer and put themselves on the NFL draft map. Cam Ward, for example, right? Right after that, we have Sam Levitt, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's had a pretty good season at Arizona State last year. All right, let's get into tier 6. We're going to go through this very quick, okay? Because there's not much time left. Jacoby Lane out of USC, nice big body receiver. Carson Beck, who failed miserably this year, but transferred to Miami. We'll see if he, ends up being better. Jamarion Miller out of Alabama should take the majority of the workload this year. Dane Key, the big body receiver who transfers over to Nebraska. Abu Sama, who had one of the best freshman seasons at the running back position, but then completely fell off a cliff the next year. And then let's get into tier 7 here. Names like Avery Johnson, Jaden Art, Mark Fletcher, DeAndre Moore, Kevin Concepcion, and Nick Harbor. The name I really want to talk about here is Jaden Ott. Now, a lot of people were in on Jaden Ott as like a sleeper this year. Jaden Ott is a good receiver and, this and that. I will tell you guys that I am completely out on Jaden Ott. This is exactly what I told you guys last year when we were talking about Donovan Edwards. We said, look, there is literally no reason to be in on Donovan Edwards anymore. I'm telling you, there's probably no reason to be in on Jaden Ott. Maybe I'm wrong, but check this out. He had 385 rushing yards, worst in the class that I scouted. Okay, and this is out of the players I charted. Let me be very clear. Worst in the class rushing yards, 3.3 yards per attempt. Guys, that was 217th out of 219 running backs in college football with 75 attempts. Okay, he had just 2 touchdowns. He had a 1.94 yards after contact per attempt, worst in the class. Missed tackles forced, worst in the class. Missed tackles forced per attempt, worst in the class. I mean, I just don't really know what people are holding on to right now with Jaydn Ott. I think it's probably time to move on the same way it was time to move on from Donovan Edwards last year. Okay, a lot of names, guys. I want to have a little conclusion section here. And I want to tell you guys again, anything can happen, right? Jaden Daniels came out of nowhere and became, you know, a top pick. Okay, we've seen this year in, year out. Zay Flowers had an incredible year out of Boston College, put himself on the map. But again, since I started doing this, this is the worst class I've ever seen 1 year out, point blank period. So my piece of advice for you, I'm not going to tell you to panic sell 2026 first round picks, but I'm also going to tell you to explore your options. If you're a contending team and you just have that first round pick there because you want that safety, I am now more open than ever to shop that pick. Now, of course, anything can happen. We could be looking at a year from now and saying, wow, this class, everybody who had all this potential actually filled up their potential and you know, even went beyond that. And now it looks like an incredible class. But again, 1 year out, I've never seen a class looking this terrible. And I am worried that next year might be the most disappointing, depressing year we've ever seen. And I'm typically Mr. Glass Half Full. So appreciate you watching the video. Hopefully that's not too depressing. Drop a like, subscribe, and check out my charts on the Flock Fantasy website. And I'll see you guys in the next video. All love. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.